Hey guys, tonight we trudge through the muddy lanes of a medieval English hamlet around 1348 Common Era, where the air's damp with the scent of wet straw and the faint smoke of dung-fueled fires. Picture yourself hauling a sack of barley, your boots sinking into the muck, as church bells clang and a distant cow lows, while whispers of plague creep through the village like fog. You're here to uncover how medieval peasants survived plagues, famine, and lords, a gritty dance of endurance in a world stacked against them. Spoiler, you probably won't survive a day without your modern fridge and antibiotics, let alone outsmart disease with a posse of herbs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a ramshackle village, its wattle and daub huts huddled under a gray sky. The fields beyond patchy with barley and rye. You're a peasant, your hands calloused from plowing, your tunic patched from years of wear. Mainstream fact, in medieval Europe, particularly during the 14th century Common Era, peasants formed the backbone of society, working feudal lands to feed themselves and their lords while facing recurring plagues, like the Black Death, which killed up to half the population between 1347 and 1351 Common Era. You sling the barley sack over your shoulder, its weight biting. Modern you would be ordering groceries online, not hauling grain like a human mule. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed wearing a toad around their neck warded off plague. You chuckle, patting your empty pockets, glad you're not sporting amphibian jewelry today. The village is a hive of toil. A woman churns butter by a hut. A man sharpens a scythe. Children chase a scrawny hen. You're headed to the Lord's granary, where you'll hand over half your harvest as rent, your stomach growling at the thought. Survival's a daily grind. Plagues lurk in crowded markets. Famine stalks failed crops, and the Lord's demands never ease. You're no farmer, but you're starting to feel the weight of this life. Each step through the mud a fight against a world that doesn't care. Historians still argue whether peasants were passive victims or resilient survivors. Some say they were crushed by feudal systems. Others think their ingenuity and community kept them alive through chaos. You're sweating, the sack heavy, and you're craving a modern coffee break. But the village's pulse, bells, bleats, a neighbor's shout, pulls you deeper. You pass the church, its wooden cross weathered, and hear whispers of pestilence from two women fetching water, their faces tight with fear. The Black Death's shadow looms, and you're dodging it while juggling famine's threat and the Lord's taxes. No pressure, right? Your boots squelch, and you're dreaming of paved roads. But there's a stubborn spark in this toil. Each sack you haul a small defiance of the odds. A young boy, his tunic ragged, darts past, tossing a stone at a crow. You smirk. Kid's got more aim than you have energy. The granary's ahead, its stone walls looming, and you're braced for the steward's sharp eye, knowing every grain counts in a world where survival's never guaranteed. Your eyelids droop. The villages hum. Mud squish. Winds moan. Distant prayers, blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a damp night. You're no peasant, but you're toiling in a medieval hamlet, learning how they dodged plague's shadow, one muddy step at a time. You're trudging through the same muddy lanes of the medieval English hamlet, around 1348 Common Era.
the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and the acrid tang of burning herbs, a desperate bid to fend off the plague. The barley sack's weight still lingers in your shoulders, that granary haul, but now you're weaving between huts, clutching a rag to your face, here to evade the Black Death's grin dance using peasant remedies and sheer grit. Mainstream fact, during the Black Death from 1347 to 1351 Common Era, medieval peasants faced devastating mortality rates, with up to 50% of Europe's population dying, relying on folk remedies like herb posies and bloodletting due to limited medical knowledge. You tuck a sprig of rosemary into your belt, its sharp scent your only shield. Modern you would be stocking up on hand sanitizer, not betting on plants. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants swore sleeping with a goat in their hut purified the air of plague miasmas. You chuckle, eyeing a nearby goat, glad you're not sharing a straw bed with that bleating neighbor. The village is tense, its usual bustle muted by fear. You pass a hut where a woman chants prayers, stuffing lavender into a sachet, while a man outside burns a pile of thyme, the smoke curling like a ghost. The plagues hit hard. Neighbors have vanished, their doors marked with chalk, and you're dodging anyone who coughs, your heart racing at every wheeze. Survival's a gamble, and you're learning the peasants' tricks. Rub vinegar on your hands, chew garlic, avoid bad air near the river. You're no doctor, but you're starting to grasp why they clung to these remedies. Hope was all they had when death knocked. Your rags damp with sweat, and you're moving fast, aiming for the healer's hut, where a wise woman brews tonics that might keep the plague at bay. The healer's hut is cramped, its walls hung with dried herbs, the air thick with the scent of boiled nettles. She hands you a clay cup of bitter broth, willow bark and yarrow, she says, to cleanse the blood. You sip, wincing at the taste, and listen as she mutters about balancing humors, her hands steady despite the village's panic. Historians still argue whether peasant remedies were futile or occasionally effective. Some say they were placebo at best, rooted in superstition. Others think herbs like yarrow had mild antiseptic properties, offering slim protection. You're too nervous to care. You're gulping the broth, hoping it's not just flavored mud, and you're starting to feel the desperation. Each remedy a fragile shield against the plague's shadow. That granary's looming rent feels tame now, doesn't it? Using a gentle, warm American voice helps soothe and relax. The village hums with dread. A bell tolls for another burial. A child's wail cuts through the smoke. The wind carries a faint chant from the church. You spot a young girl tying a posy of roses to her door, her fingers trembling but her face set, probably praying it keeps death away. You smirk. Kids got more faith in flowers than you have in this broth. Your boots are caked with mud, and you're dreaming of a modern pharmacy. But there's a stubborn spark in this evasion. Each herb and chant a peasant's defiance of the inevitable. The healer warns you to avoid the market. Too many bodies, too much miasma. And you nod, clutching your rosemary tighter, your path now a maze to dodge infection. You slip past a cart piled with blankets, likely from a plagued hut, and hear a man mutter about God's wrath as he sprinkles vinegar on his doorstep. The remedies are endless. Some rub onion on their skin, others wear amulets of bone. But you're sticking to the healer's advice, her broth sloshing in your stomach like a sour prayer. The plague's dance is relentless, and you're weaving through it, your rag pressed to your nose, eyes scanning for feverish faces. A grizzled farmer, his hands dirt-stained, offers you a garlic clove, swearing it saved his wife. You take it, chewing its bitter fire, and grin. He's either a genius or a garlic fanatic. That toad necklace you dodged? The village's rhythm is jagged, prayers, coughs, the creak of a cart hauling the dead. You're tied to this fight, each step a bid to outwit death. The peasant's remedies a fragile thread in a world unraveling. Your eyelids droop, the healer's hut fading as the herb smoke and the village's hum, bells, wind, faint sobs, blend into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a damp night. You're no physician, but you're evading the plague's grim dance, learning how medieval peasants survived with little more than herbs and hope. Their remedies a desperate spark in the hamlet's shadowed heart.
You're still weaving through the muddy lanes of the medieval English hamlet, around 1348 Common Era, the air thick with the scent of rotting straw and the faint sweetness of wild berries you're clutching, scavenged from a thorny hedge. The plague's shadow lingers, that healer's bitter broth, but now famine's hungry grip tightens, and you're here to outwit starvation by foraging, bartering, and stretching every scrap in a village where crops have failed. Mainstream fact, during the 14th century Common Era, European peasants faced recurring famines, often worsened by poor harvests and feudal demands, relying on wild foods like berries, roots, and nettles to survive, as evidenced by records of crop yields and diet studies. You stuff a handful of berries into your mouth, their tart juice staining your lips. Modern you would be raiding a grocery store, not gambling on hedge snacks. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed eating acorns blessed by a priest could stave off hunger pains. You chuckle, eyeing the oak trees, glad you're not munching holy nuts just yet. The village is gaunt, its fields patchy with wilted rye, the harvest too thin to fill the Lord's granary or your own meager pantry. You're scouring the outskirts, a woven basket slung over your arm, hunting for anything edible, dandelions, mushrooms, maybe a stray turnip missed by the gleaners. Hunger's a constant ache, and you're learning the peasants' tricks. Boil nettles for soup, dry berries for winter, barter a hen's egg for a neighbor's leeks. You're no forager, but you're starting to grasp how they survived famine's bite. Each find a small victory in a world where food was never guaranteed. Your basket's half full, the berries joined by a few limp greens, and you're headed to the village edge, where a stream might hide fish or cress. A grizzled woman, her face lined from years of toil, crouches nearby, digging for roots with a stick, her muttered prayers mixing with the wind. She shares a tip. Soak bark in water for a chewy bread when grain's gone. You nod, tucking away the grim recipe, and offer her a berry, her quick smile a rare warmth in this lean season. Historians still argue whether peasants' foraging was a mastered skill or desperate scavenging. Some say they were expert botanists, knowing every edible plant. Others think they ate anything, risking poison in their hunger. You're too focused to debate. Your stomach's growling, and you're scanning the stream bank, hoping for a fish to snag with a makeshift net. That plague-dodging sprint feels distant now, doesn't it? The hamlet's rhythm is subdued, a cow's low moan, a child's whine for food, the creak of a cart hauling sparse grain to the Lord's manor. You spot a young boy shinnying up a tree, shaking down crab apples, his grin defiant despite his hollow cheeks. You smirk. Kid's got more guts than you, braving thorns for sour fruit. Your hands are scratched from brambles, and you're dreaming of a modern food truck. But there's a stubborn spark in this scavenging, each berry and root a peasant's defiance of starvation. You wade into the stream, the icy water numbing your feet, and pluck watercress, its peppery leaves a small prize in your basket, tying you to a village fighting to eat. You trudge back toward the huts, your basket heavier but still pitiful, and pass a man bartering a bundle of twigs for a neighbor's onion, his voice sharp with need. The famine stripped the village bare, barns are empty, livestock slaughtered early, and you're stretching every find, planning to boil the cress with a bone for broth. A woman by a hut, her apron patched, offers a handful of dried peas for your berries, her eyes wary but kind. You trade, the peas rattling in your palm, and grin. She's a better haggler than you'll ever be, that toad necklace you laughed at. The village's air is heavy, the smoke of dung fires mingling with the damp. And you're starting to respect these survival tricks, where every scrap was a lifeline in famine's cruel grip. The church bell tolls, a reminder of the Lord's tithe, even in lean times. And you're braced for another day of scavenging, your basket a fragile shield against hunger. A girl, her hair tangled, chews a dandelion stem, her gaze fixed on the horizon, maybe dreaming of full fields. You slip her a berry, her nod a quiet thanks, and feel the village's pulse, slow, strained, but alive. The famine's relentless, but you're outwitting it, your hands dirty with earth, your basket a testament to peasant grit. The hamlet's hum, winds moan, a dog's bark, faint prayers, pulls you deeper, and you're not just surviving, but learning a truth. Food was a fight, won through cunning and community. Your eyelids droop, the stream's chill and the berry's tart scent blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a cold night. You're no forager, but you're scavenging to beat famine's grip, a peasant spark in the hamlet's starving heart.
You're trudging back through the muddy lanes of the medieval English hamlet around 1348 Common Era, the air heavy with the scent of damp thatch and the faint tang of manure from fields you've just worked, your basket of foraged cress and berries, that famine-beating haul, tucked under your arm. The plague's shadow and hunger's bite linger, but now you're laboring under the Lord's heavy yoke, facing feudal demands that squeeze every ounce of your strength while you carve out small freedoms. Mainstream fact, in 14th century Europe, peasants were bound by feudalism, owing lords labor, crops, and taxes, often 50% of their harvest, while maintaining their own survival, as documented in manorial records from England. You heft a wooden hoe, its handle worn smooth, and trudge toward the Lord's fields. Modern you would be calling in sick, not plowing for a noble who barely knows your name. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants hid grain in hollowed-out logs to dodge the Lord's tithe, risking a whipping if caught. You chuckle, patting your empty basket, hoping you don't need to get that sneaky. The village is a blur of toil under the Lord's watchful steward, his quill scratching as he tallies your work. You're in the domain fields, breaking clods of earth with the hoe, your back aching as you prepare for spring planting, the Lord's share always first. Feudal life's a grind. You owe 3 days a week here, plus a cut of your crops, leaving little for your family's hut. Survival's a balancing act. Work the Lord's land, tend your own plot, dodge plague, and find food. Those nettles you boiled? You're no serf, but you're feeling the yoke's weight, each swing of the hoe a reminder of the Lord's grip. The steward barks at a lagging neighbor, and you keep your head down, your hands blistered but steady. A grizzled farmer nearby, his tunic patched, mutters about slipping an extra sheaf of barley into his own barn last harvest. You nod, keeping his secret, and share a cress leaf from your basket, his quick grin a spark of defiance. Freedom's small but precious, sneaking a fish from the Lord's stream, planting a hidden patch of turnips, or lingering at the village well to gossip. Historians still argue whether peasants passively endured feudalism or quietly resisted. Some say they were trapped by law and custom. Others think they carved out autonomy through cunning and community. You're too sore to debate. You're hoeing, the mud sucking at your boots, and you're starting to grasp how they survived. Each stolen moment a rebellion against the Lord's demands. That garlic clove you chewed? The hamlet's rhythm is relentless. Oxen low, a cart creaks under the steward's grain. A woman's song drifts from a hut. You spot a young boy hauling water for the Lord's manor, his shoulders slumped, but his pace steady, probably dreaming of a free day. You smirk. Kids tougher than you, lugging buckets while you're whining about blisters. Your hands ache, and you're dreaming of a modern union break. But there's a gritty spark in this labor. Each row you plow a step toward your own plot's harvest. You pause to wipe sweat, glancing at the manor house, its stone walls looming, and wonder if the Lord even knows the village starves while he dines on venison. Your small freedoms, bartering cress, hiding a carrot, are lifelines, tying you to a hamlet that bends but doesn't break. You shift to your own tiny strip of land, a patch barely wide enough for beans and onions, and work faster, the hoe lighter here. A woman, her apron stuffed with gleaned wheat, offers a sip of watery ale, her eyes sharp as she whispers about a late-night meeting to dodge the Lord's new tax. You sip, the ale's tang grounding you, and grin. She's bolder than you'll ever be. That toad necklace you dodged? The Lord's yoke is heavy, but you're learning the peasant's dance. Bow to the steward, then sneak a fish, plant extra, whisper rebellion. The church bell tolls, signaling the day's end, but you're still hoeing, your plot a fragile hope against famine and tithes. The village's air is damp, the smoke of dung fires curling, and you're starting to respect this grind, where survival meant outwitting both nature and nobles. The fields stretch under a gray sky, and you're braced for tomorrow's labor. The Lord's demands a constant shadow. A girl, her hands dirt-stained, tosses a pebble at a crow, her giggle a fleeting joy in the toil. You slip her a berry, her nod a quiet bond, and feel the hamlet's pulse, slow, strained, but defiant. The Lord's manor looms, but you're carving out freedom, your hoe a tool of both servitude and hope. The hamlet's hum, bells, wind, a neighbor's curse, pulls you deeper. And you're not just laboring, but living a truth. Survival was a cunning fight, won through sweat and secrets. Your eyelids droop, the fields chill and the ale's faint warmth blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a cold night. You're no peasant, but you're toiling under the Lord's yoke, learning how they survived with small, stubborn freedoms in the hamlet's muddy heart. You're trudging back through the muddy lanes of the medieval English hamlet around 1348 Common Era. The air heavy with the scent of damp straw and the faint warmth of a communal fire flickering in the village center, where you're headed after a day's labor under the Lord's yoke. That hoe's blisters still sting. The plague shadow and famine's bite linger, but now you're here to lean on your neighbors, sharing survival's hard lessons in a tight-knit community that holds the hamlet together against all odds. Mainstream fact, in 14th century Europe, peasant communities were interdependent, pooling resources, labor, and knowledge to survive crises like the Black Death and famines, as shown in village records of shared tools and mutual aid. You clutch a bundle of gleaned wheat, a gift from a neighbor, and weave toward the fire. Modern you would be texting for help, not banking on village gossip for survival tips. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed a shared loaf baked on St. Agnes's Eve could bind neighbors against misfortune. You chuckle, eyeing the fire's glow, hoping no one's baking charmed bread tonight. The village center is a rare haven, a muddy clearing where a dozen peasants huddle around the fire, their faces lit by its flickering light. You're joining them, your wheat bundle a trade for a seat and a sip of watery ale, the communal pot simmering with nettle broth. Survival's a team effort here. Share a fish, mend a neighbor's roof, Watch each other's kids. And you're learning the unspoken rules. Give what you can, take what you need. You're no social butterfly, but you're starting to feel the community's strength. Each shared scrap or story a shield against plague, hunger, and lords. That steward's sharp quill? A grizzled woman, her hands knotted from weaving, passes you a clay cup of ale. Her nod a quiet welcome, as she shares a trick. Boil acorns with ash for a filling mush. You sip the ale, its tang grounding you, and listen as a man recounts hiding turnips from the Lord's tithe, his low laugh sparking grins around the fire. The community's bond is palpable. Neighbors trade seeds, nurse the sick, bury the dead together. And you're pitching in, offering your wheat to the broth pot, its grains sinking into the mix. Historians still argue whether peasant communities were egalitarian or hierarchical. Some say mutual aid leveled social gaps. Others think stronger families dominated, hoarding resources. You're too warmed by the fire to care. You're stirring the pot, the steam rising, and you're starting to grasp how they survived. Each shared meal a defiance of the hamlet's threats. That yarrow broth you choked down? The village hums with weary life. The fires crackle, a child's soft hum as she clutches a rag doll. The winds moan through bare trees. You spot a young boy tossing twigs into the flames, his eyes bright as he boasts about snaring a rabbit for his family. You smirk. Kid's a better hunter than you, and he's half your size. Your hands are cold, and you're dreaming of a modern group chat. But there's a deep pull in this gathering, each story and scrap tying you to a Viking world where community was survival. That cress you bartered? The broth's ready, and you ladle a portion, its warmth seeping into your bones, a reminder of the neighbors who keep the hamlet alive when lords and plagues don't care. A woman, her scarf frayed, starts a song about a bountiful harvest, her voice thin but steady, and you join in, your croak blending with the groups. The fire's light dances on their faces, tired, scarred, but unbroken, and you're struck by the lessons shared here. How to spot edible mushrooms, when to plant beans, who to trust with your last egg. A grizzled man, his beard flecked with ash, shares a warning about the Lord's new tax, his whisper urging secrecy, and you nod, feeling the community's quiet defiance. That hidden grain log you heard about? The hamlet's air is damp, the smoke curling upward, and you're starting to respect this bond, where survival was a collective vow, forged in firelight and favors. The night deepens, and you're tasked with adding a log to the fire, its weight heavy in your chilled hands. A girl, her cheeks smudged with dirt, offers a dried apple slice, her shy grin a small gift, and you munch, the sweetness a rare treat. The community's strength is tangible. Neighbors who share broth today might save your life tomorrow. And you're part of it, your wheat in the pot, your voice in the song. The hamlet's pulse is steady, the fire's pop, a dog's distant bark, the song's fading notes. You're tied to this bond, where every shared lesson, from foraging to dodging tithes, was a thread in the village's survival, a spark in the face of chaos. Your eyelids droop, the fire's warmth and the broth's earthy scent blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a cold night. You're no villager, but you're leaning on neighbors, learning how medieval peasants survived through community's tight bond, a glowing heart in the hamlet's muddy embrace. You're still lingering in the medieval English hamlet, around 1348 Common Era, the air crisp with the scent of frost on thatch roofs, and the faint incense of a candle burning in the village's tiny chapel, where you're headed after sharing broth by the communal fire, that nettle soup you stirred. The plague's shadow, famine's grip, and the Lord's demands weigh heavy.
But now you're here to pray in the chapel, clinging to faith's flickering hope as a spiritual solace that kept peasants afloat in a brutal world. Mainstream fact: in 14th century Europe, Christianity was a cornerstone of peasant life, with village churches serving as spiritual and social hubs where people sought divine protection from plagues and famines, as evidenced by parish records and church art. You clutch a worn wooden cross, its edges smooth from worry. Modern you would be scrolling for comfort, not kneeling on cold stone. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed tying a saint's relic to their ankle could ward off disease. You chuckle, patting your empty boot, glad you're not limping with a holy bone today. The chapel's a squat timber building, its walls patched with daub, the door creaking as you slip inside. The air's heavy with wax and mildew, a single candle flickering on a rough altar, casting shadows on a faded mural of St. Michael. You kneel, the stone floor biting your knees, and murmur a prayer for protection from the plague, your voice joining a soft chant from a handful of villagers huddled nearby. Faith's your anchor here, promising salvation, explaining suffering, and you're learning how peasants leaned on it to face the Black Death's terror and empty barns, those berries you scavenged. You're no priest, but you're starting to feel the solace, each whispered plea a shield against a world that feels cursed. A grizzled woman, her shawl frayed, kneels beside you, clutching a rosary of knotted string, her lips moving fast as she prays for her sick child. She shares a tip: offer a candle to Saint Roch for plague protection, and you nod, slipping a bent nail, your only offering, onto the altar, hoping it counts. The chapel's a refuge, where peasants beg for miracles, confess fears, or simply escape the Lord's fields. Historians still argue whether faith was a genuine comfort or a tool of control. Some say it gave peasants resilience, a way to endure chaos. Others think the church used it to keep them submissive, tying salvation to obedience. You're too weary to care. You're praying. The candles glow steady, and you're grasping how faith kept hope alive, even when plague carts rolled. That garlic clove you chewed? The hamlet's rhythm is hushed. The wind's low moan, a distant dog's bark, the soft clink of the woman's rosary. You spot a young boy lighting a taper at the altar, his hands trembling but his face set, probably praying for his father, lost to fever. You smirk, kids braver than you, facing God with a stubby candle. Your knees ache, and you're dreaming of a modern therapist's couch, but there's a quiet strength in this faith, each prayer tying you to a Viking world where belief was a lifeline, that communal fire's warmth. The priest, a thin man with ink-stained fingers, shuffles in, offering a blessing, his voice weary but kind, and you bow, feeling the chapel's calm, a rare pause in the hamlet's grind. You light a splinter from the candle, its flame wavering, and add it to the altar, your nail offering joined by others, a button, a pebble, a scrap of cloth. The woman whispers that St. Agnes protects against famine, and you file it away, your cross gripped tighter. Faith's not just prayers here, it's action. Pilgrimages to shrines, fasting for grace, or burying charms under thresholds. You're starting to respect this hope, where every candle and chant was a peasant's stand against despair, a days-long plea for divine mercy in a world of lords and loss. A man, his hands dirt-caked, kneels nearby, muttering about a vision of Mary in the woods, and you grin. He's either blessed or eating the wrong mushrooms. That acorn mush you dodged? The chapel's air is cool, the incense faint but grounding, and you're caught in its stillness. The villager's prayers a soft chorus. The boy's taper burns low, and you slip him your splinter to keep it lit, his nod a quiet bond. The hamlet's pulse is faint but steady, the creak of the chapel door, a woman's sob, the wind rattling the roof.
You're tied to this faith, where every prayer was a thread in the peasant's survival, a flickering spark against plague and hunger. Your eyelids droop, the candles glow, and the incense's faint curl, blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a cold night. You're no believer, but you're praying in the chapel, learning how medieval peasants found solace in faith's flickering hope, a glowing heart in the hamlet's shadowed embrace. You're trudging out from the chapel's dim glow in the medieval English hamlet around 1348 Common Era, the night air sharp with the scent of frost and the faint smoke of dung fires smoldering in nearby huts. The wooden cross still swings at your chest, that candlelit prayer you whispered, but now you're back in the muddy lanes, here to wield peasant ingenuity, crafting tools from scraps to survive the relentless grind of plagues, famine, and lords. Mainstream fact: in 14th century Europe, peasants were adept at improvising tools from wood, bone, and salvaged metal, creating everything from plows to fishing nets to sustain their households, as evidenced by archaeological finds of handmade implements in village sites. You clutch a whittled stick, its tip sharpened for digging roots. Modern you would be ordering gadgets online, not carving your own survival kit. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed a tool carved during a new moon lasted longer, blessed by lunar spirits. You chuckle, eyeing your stick, hoping it doesn't snap under a bad moon's curse. The village is quiet under starlight, most huts dark as families huddle against the cold. You're headed to a lean-to behind your hut, where you've stashed scraps, twigs, a broken hoe, a cow bone, to craft something useful. Maybe a trap for rabbits or a hook for streamfish. Ingenuity's your edge here. With no blacksmith's forge or coin for iron, you're turning trash into tools, a peasant's answer to famine's bite and the Lord's tithes. Those beans you planted? You're no carpenter, but you're starting to feel the spark of this craft, each carved notch a small defiance of a world that offers no handouts. Your hands are chilled, the sticks bark rough, and you're settling by a small fire, its glow barely enough to see your work. A grizzled neighbor, his cloak patched, squats nearby, shaving a branch into a spindle for his wife's loom, his knife glinting as he shares a trick. Soak bone in vinegar to soften it for carving. You nod, filing it away, and offer him a sliver of cress from your basket, his grunt a quiet thanks. The hamlet survival hinges on these hacks. Whittle a plow blade from oak, braid nettles into rope, repurpose a cracked pot for seed storage. Historians still argue whether peasant ingenuity was born of necessity or a honed tradition. Some say it was desperate improvisation under feudal pressure. Others think it was a skilled craft, passed down like folklore. You're too focused to care. You're carving the stick into a fishhook, your knife slipping, and you're grasping how they survived, each tool a lifeline against hunger and lords. That nettle broth you shared? The hamlet's rhythm is soft, the fire's faint crackle, a distant owl's hoot, the creak of a shutter in the wind. You spot a young girl scavenging twigs for her family's fire, her arms full, her hum defiant despite the cold. You smirk. Kid's a better scavenger than you, and she's not even trying. Your fingers are numb, and you're dreaming of a modern hardware store. But there's a gritty pride in this crafting, each notch tying you to a Viking world where scraps became sustenance. That lord's heavy yoke? The hook's taking shape, its curve crude but promising, and you're almost proud, though you're half convinced it'll catch more mud than fish. You shift to a pile of reeds, braiding them into a small net, your hands clumsy but learning, guided by the neighbor's low hum about a snare that caught a hare last week. The lean-to's shelter is flimsy, the wind sneaking through gaps, but it's your workshop, where bone becomes a needle, twigs a trap, and ingenuity a weapon.
A woman, her apron frayed, pauses to trade a clay shard for your extra reeds, her eyes sharp as she plans a new pot. You trade, the shard's edge useful for scraping, and grin. She's craftier than you'll ever be. That holy relic you skipped? The hamlet's air is cold, the smoke curling upward, and you're starting to respect this ingenuity, where every scrap was a chance to outwit nature and nobles, a days-long craft of survival. The stars gleam above, and you're testing the net, its knots holding, despite your shaky work. The neighbor mutters about a coming frost, urging you to carve faster, and you're braced for another day of scavenging scraps, your hook and net a fragile hope against famine. A boy, his tunic ragged, darts past, tossing a pebble at a rat, his giggle a fleeting joy in the dark. You slip him a reed to play with, his nod a quiet bond, and feel the hamlet's pulse, slow, strained, but clever. The Lord's manor looms in the distance, but you're crafting freedom, your knife a tool of both need and defiance. The hamlet's hum, winds moan, fires pop, a neighbor's cough, pulls you deeper, and you're not just carving, but living a truth. Survival was a craft, won through wits and scraps. Your eyelids droop, the fire's glow and the stick's earthy scent blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a cold night. You're no artisan, but you're wielding peasant ingenuity, learning how medieval peasants survived with clever tricks, a spark in the hamlet's muddy heart. You're trudging through the icy lanes of the medieval English hamlet, around 1348 Common Era, the twilight air sharp with the scent of snow-dusted thatch and the faint tang of smoke from a neighbor's hearth. Your mended cloak, that bone needle stitches, flapping in the wind. Winter's bite deepens, and the season's cycle grinds on. But now you're here to whisper defiance, kindling rebellion's quiet spark against the Lord's unjust rule that chokes the village alongside plagues and famine. Mainstream fact, in 14th century Europe, peasant revolts, like the English Peasants' Revolt of 1381 Common Era, were sparked by heavy taxes and feudal oppression, with villages quietly resisting through sabotage or secret gatherings long before open rebellion, as documented in court rolls. You clutch a hidden turnip, snuck from the Lord's field. Modern you would be tweeting a complaint, not risking a lashing for a vegetable. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants marked stolen goods with a secret notch to claim them later, like medieval Robin Hoods. You chuckle, patting the turnip, hoping your notch stays hidden from the steward's sharp eyes. The village is still under winter's grip, its huts dark save for faint firelight, and you're slipping toward a shadowed barn where whispers of resistance hum. The Lord's latest tax, a penny per hearth, has sparked anger, piling on to the tithes and labor you've endured. Those turnips you buried? You're joining a handful of neighbors, their faces tense but determined, to plot small acts of defiance. Hide grain, slow work on the Lord's fields, maybe nick a sheep. You're no rebel, but you're feeling the spark. Each whispered plan a crack in the Lord's yoke, a way to survive the hamlet's crushing odds. That nettle broth you shared? Your breath clouds in the cold, and you're crouching by the barn's wall, the turnip a secret weight in your cloak. A grizzled woman, her hands knotted from weaving, hisses about loosening a fence to let the Lord's pigs wander, her eyes glinting with mischief. You nod, offering a dried pea from your stash, her quick grin a bond in the dark. Resistance is subtle here. Misplace a tool, forget a tax payment, spread rumors of the Lord's greed, and you're learning its rhythm, each act a pebble against the manor's stone walls. Historians still argue whether peasant resistance was organized or spontaneous. Some say villages planned defiance in secret networks. Others think it was chaotic, driven by desperation. You're too nervous to care. You're suggesting to underreport your harvest, your voice low, and you're grasping how they survived. Each small rebellion a spark against the Lord's rule. That yarrow broth you choked down? The hamlet's rhythm is hushed. The wind's low howl, a dog's distant bark, the creak of the barn's timbers. You spot a young boy lurking nearby, his eyes wide as he overhears your whispers, probably itching to join the plot. You smirk. Kids braver than you, spying in the snow while you're shivering. Your hands are frozen, and you're dreaming of a modern protest march. But there's a gritty thrill in this defiance, each plan tying you to a world where peasants pushed back, that lord's heavy yoke? The group agrees to skip a day's labor, blaming a fever, and you're in. Your turnip a token of your quiet revolt, a nod to the hamlet's stubborn heart. You shift closer to the barn's warmth, the group's whispers weaving tales of past tricks, a lost cart of grain, a field left half-plowed. A man, his beard flecked with frost, shares a story of his father cutting the Lord's reins, slowing a tax collector's ride. You grin. He's either a legend or a tall-tale champ. That acorn mush you dodged? The rebellion's spark is fragile. Get caught and it stalks or worse. But it's real, fueled by shared hunger and anger. The hamlet's air is icy, the snow dusting your cloak, and you're starting to respect this defiance, where every hidden grain was a peasant's stand against injustice, a days-long fight for dignity in a world of lords and loss. The meeting scatters as a patrol's lantern sways in the distance, and you're slipping back to your hut, the turnip tucked deeper in your cloak. A woman, her scarf tight, presses a twig into your hand, its end notched, a sign of the pact, and you nod, feeling the weight of trust. The Lord's manor looms, its chimneys smoking while the village starves. But you're kindling rebellion, your whispers a thread in the hamlet's survival. The hamlet's pulse is faint, the crunch of snow, a shutter's creak, a neighbor's stifled laugh. You're tied to this spark, where every act of defiance, from hiding food to skipping work, was a peasant's vow to reclaim a sliver of freedom. Your eyelids droop, the cold's bite and the turnip's earthy scent blending into a sleepy haze, like a fan's hum on a snowy night. You're no revolutionary, but you're whispering defiance, learning how medieval peasants survived by kindling rebellion's quiet spark, a glowing thread in the hamlet's frozen heart. You're huddled in the dim warmth of your wattle and daub hut in the medieval English hamlet, around 1348 Common Era. The air soft with the scent of damp straw and the faint glow of a single rushlight, its flame flickering as winter's frost seeps through the walls. The turnip you hid, that rebellious notch, rests under a loose floorboard, and now you're here to reflect on the peasants' enduring legacy, their gritty survival through plagues, famine, and lords, leaving a quiet echo in history's tapestry. Mainstream fact, in 14th century Europe, peasants' resilience shaped medieval society, their labor and ingenuity sustaining communities despite crises like the Black Death and feudal oppression, as evidenced by surviving village records and archaeological finds of tools and crops. You trace the wooden cross at your chest, its worn edges a comfort. Modern you would be streaming a documentary, not pondering a legacy carved in mud and sweat. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed a well-kept hearth could pass their spirit to future generations, keeping their memory alive. You chuckle, eyeing the rushlight,
hoping your flickering flame doesn't have to carry that load. The hut is a fragile cocoon, the wind's low moan muffled by the thatch as you sit on a straw pallet. The hamlet's struggles, plague, hunger, lords, that nettle broth, that stolen turnip, weigh on your mind. You're no historian, but you're feeling the peasants' legacy, their survival a story of stubborn hope that outlasted their lords' manners. They fed Europe, built its churches, and defied despair with shared fires and whispered plots, their lives a foundation for the world that followed. You're starting to see their echo in every modern field, every community that rallies against odds, their grit a thread through time. The rushlight's glow is faint, but it's enough, tying you to a village that endured through sheer will. That chapel's candlelit prayers? A grizzled voice outside, a neighbor mending a net, hums a tune about a hero who outwitted a lord, and you smile, recognizing the defiance you whispered in the barn. The peasant's legacy isn't just survival, but resistance. Hiding grain, crafting tools, praying for miracles. And it lives in stories, in the fields they plowed, in the hamlets that grew into towns. Historians still argue whether peasants were mere cogs or quiet architects of change. Some say they were powerless, ground down by feudalism. Others think their resilience sparked shifts, like the labor shortages after the Black Death that weakened Lord's grip. You're too cozy to debate. You're stroking the cross, the hut's stillness a canvas for their legacy, each memory a spark of their enduring heart. That fishhook you carved? The hamlet's rhythm is gentle. The rushlight's hiss, a dog's soft snore, the creak of a distant shutter. You spot a young girl through the hut's gap, her silhouette gathering snow for water, her hum unbroken by the cold, carrying the same grit you've seen in neighbors' faces. You smirk. Kids already part of the legacy, tougher than you'll ever be. Your hands are warm, and you're dreaming of a modern cozy blanket, but there's a deep pull in this reflection, each thought tying you to a world where peasants' survival shaped history. That communal fire's warmth? You think of their tools, their prayers, their rebellions, small acts that built a world where lords faded but villages endured, their echo in every modern harvest and helping hand. You lean back, the straw rustling, and let the rushlight's glow fill the hut, its light dancing on the rough walls. The peasant's legacy is alive in the hamlet's pulse, in the songs, the fields, the stubborn hope that carried them through plague carts and empty barns. You felt it, the shared broth, the whittled net, the whispered plans, each a note in a song that outlasted stone manners. A woman's voice drifts from a nearby hut, singing of spring's return, and you're struck by the continuity. Her tune could be sung today, in fields far from this frost. You're part of their story, your turnip a tiny rebellion, your prayers a flicker of their faith, their legacy a quiet vow to live, love, and endure. The rushlight burns low, and you're wrapping your cloak tighter, the hut's chill creeping in. A man's cough outside, a neighbor's farewell, carries the warmth of community, the same bond that fed and fought for this hamlet. The peasant's legacy isn't grand. It's in the mud, the hearth, the hands that sowed and shared. And you're holding it, your cross a link to their stubborn heart. The hamlet's pulse fades, the winds sigh, the straws rustle, a soft hum. You're tied to their echo, where every act of survival was a spark in history's glow, a gentle thread in the world's long weave. As stars gleam beyond the thatch, the rushlight's glow fades, its embers a whisper of hearths past, their warmth cradling a village's dreams. Picture yourself sinking into the straw, the cross's weight lingering, its story
Mud, faith, defiance, drifting skyward like smoke. Let the cool air hold you, the hamlet's murmur blending with the wind's gentle sigh, easing your heart. You're safe here, wrapped in a tale of peasants who endured, their slow grit a tender spark across centuries. Drift now, the world softening, and sleep deeply, cradled in the quiet glow of their legacy, where every struggle was a promise kept. Sweet dreams.